Here's something the government didn't announce: no press conference, no official statement. It was buried in budget documents and only came out because journalists started digging. Canada has quietly started making payments for 14 additional F 35 fighter jets. Now, wait a minute, you might be thinking, didn't Carney put the whole F 35 program under review? Didn't he say Canada needs to be less dependent on American military equipment? Yes, he did say that. And yes, he's still reviewing the program, so why is he secretly buying more jets? This is where it gets interesting. Because when you understand what Carney is actually doing here, you realize this might be one of the smartest negotiating moves we've seen from a Canadian Prime Minister in decades. He's not folding to American pressure. He's playing a completely different game, and Washington is not happy about it. Let me take you back to the beginning so you understand the full picture. In 2023, the Trudeau government signed a deal to buy 88 F 35 fighter jets from Lockheed Martin. The price tag was $19 billion with a total life cycle cost of nearly $74 billion. These jets were meant to replace our aging fleet of CF-18 Hornets, some of which have been flying since the 1980s. But here's the thing. When that deal was signed, Canada only committed to buying the first 16 jets. The remaining 72 were essentially on hold, pending future decisions. Then Trump came back into office. Tariffs, threats about annexation, talk of making Canada the 51st state. The whole relationship between our two countries changed overnight. One of Mark Carney's first acts as Prime Minister was ordering a complete review of the F-35 purchase. His reasoning was clear. Why would we spend tens of billions of dollars on American military equipment when the American president is threatening our sovereignty? At the same time, Sweden's Saab company came forward with an alternative. They offered to sell Canada their Gripen fighter jets and build them right here in Canada. That would create thousands of Canadian jobs and reduce our dependence on American defense contractors. So everyone assumed Canada was walking away from the F-35, but then quietly, without any fanfare, the government started making payments for 14 more jets. When the Prime Minister was asked about it in Parliament, he confirmed it. Yes, we're paying a small amount to keep our options open. A small amount. Options. Those words are very carefully chosen. If you believe in Canada standing strong, hit that like button. Let's get this message out there. Here's what most people missed about this story. Those payments Carney authorized are for something called long lead items. These are specialized components that take years to manufacture. Things like advanced avionics, stealth coatings, and engine parts. If you don't order them well in advance, you lose your place in the production line. By making these payments, Canada keeps its spot in the queue. We're not committed to buying the jets. We're committed to having the option to buy them. Now, why would Carney do this while simultaneously reviewing whether to buy them at all? Think about it from a negotiating perspective. If Canada simply walked away from the F-35 deal, we'd have no leverage. Trump could say, "Fine, you don't want our jets, we don't need your business. End of conversation." But by keeping the option open, Carney maintains leverage in multiple directions. With the Americans, he can say, "Look, we're still interested in the F-35, but we need better terms. More Canadian jobs, better technology transfer, respect for our sovereignty." With the Swedes, he can say, "We're seriously considering the Gripen, but you need to sweeten the deal. More jobs, more local production, better pricing." Neither side knows for certain what Canada will do, and that uncertainty is incredibly valuable at the negotiating table. A former Deputy Minister of National Defense called this approach prudent and responsible. She said that in the absence of a final decision, this planning is crucial to ensuring Canada has options for replacing our fighter fleet. And here's where it gets even more interesting. The U.S. ambassador to Canada, Pete Hoekstra, actually threatened that if Canada doesn't buy all 88 F-35s, NORAD would have to be altered. He said the Americans would have to fly more of their own jets in Canadian airspace to compensate. Think about what that threat reveals. The Americans are worried. They're seeing Canada develop alternatives, and they don't like it. They want us locked in, dependent, with no other options. Carney's response has been measured but firm. He's treating the F-35 decision as a card to play in broader negotiations with Washington. Every week that Trump adds another tariff or makes another threat, it becomes another reason to consider alternatives. That's not weakness, that's strategic patience. Now let's talk about what Canada might actually end up doing. Military experts are increasingly talking about something called a mixed fleet. Instead of buying 88 of one type of jet, Canada could buy a smaller number of F-35s and supplement them with Gripens. Here's why that makes sense. The F-35 is the most advanced stealth fighter in the world. It's essential for working with American forces in NORAD and for high-end combat missions. But it's also incredibly expensive to operate, somewhere between $33,000 and $50,000 per flight hour. The Gripen, on the other hand, costs about $8,000 to $12,000 per flight hour. It's not stealth, but it's highly capable, reliable, and much easier to maintain. It can do 80 to 90% of the missions the RCAF needs to fly. A mix of both gives Canada the best of both worlds: stealth capability when we need it, affordable, reliable aircraft for everyday operations. And most importantly, we wouldn't be completely dependent on one country for our entire fighter fleet. Saab has offered to build Gripens right here in Canada. They're talking about factories in Ontario and Quebec. They're promising 12,600 Canadian jobs. And here's the kicker. Those factories wouldn't just build jets for Canada, they'd build them for export too, including potentially over 100 aircraft for Ukraine. Imagine that. Canada becoming a manufacturer of fighter jets. Canadian workers building aircraft that defend democracy in Europe. That's not just an economic opportunity. That's Canada taking its place as a serious player on the world stage. The decision hasn't been made yet. Carney is keeping all options open, which is exactly what a smart negotiator does. But the fact that we're even having this conversation shows how much has changed. A year ago, the F-35 deal seemed locked in. Now Canada is exploring alternatives, building leverage, and refusing to be bullied into a bad deal. That's the Mark Carney approach. Quiet competence, strategic thinking, always keeping your options open. So where do we go from here? The first 16 F-35s are still on track for delivery starting this year. 8 of them will be based at Luke Air Force Base in Arizona for training. Canadian pilots will learn to fly the most advanced fighter jet ever built. Meanwhile, the review continues. Carney's government is meeting with both Lockheed Martin and Saab. They're analyzing costs, capabilities, and industrial benefits. A final decision is expected sometime this summer. Whatever happens, Canada is in a stronger position than we were a year ago. We have options, we have leverage, we're not desperate, and we're not being pushed around. That's what happens when you have leadership that understands how the world actually works. Carney spent his career in international finance, dealing with governments and corporations and complex negotiations. He knows that showing your cards too early is a mistake. He knows that keeping options open gives you power. The Americans can threaten all they want. They can talk about altering NORAD or flying more jets in our airspace. But at the end of the day, they need Canada just as much as we need them, maybe more. What do you think Canada should do? Stick with the full F-35 order. Go with a mixed fleet. Buy all Gripens. I want to hear your thoughts. Drop them in the comments. This is what smart defense policy looks like. Not loud announcements, not Twitter fights, quiet moves that keep your opponents guessing while you build strength. And honestly, I think Carney is playing this perfectly.